Okay, so hi. I'm going to read a little bit from my latest book project, and a lot of it is about gender violence. And I worked at UC Santa Barbara in 2014, the summer of the Isla Vista shooting, and that was sort of the origin of this project for me. But because of what it's about, I want to set it up really thoughtfully for you. So if you might recall, May of 2014, Elliot Rodger, I know there's been a lot of this sort of violence since then, and this piece addresses some of that. This was a shooting. It was the first of what became a pattern of incel shootings. This shooting was targeting blonde sorority girls. So here's your content descriptor. And I'm going to talk about my intentions behind your content descriptor. So you'll hear some gender violence and descriptions of gun violence. I just took out a paragraph that more specifically went into what happened that day to sort of temper it. And if any time you need to walk, no questions asked, that's totally do what you need to do. My intention in writing about this and bringing these issues and talking about these issues is to examine stories about gender that are no longer serving us, and to recenter on stories about love and connection. And I also wanted to bring up, Allison gave a really excellent talk this morning, and ever since that talk I've been thinking about, I'm going to say this wrong probably, apophenia? Great. And I'm like, I think maybe this piece is apophenia, but I think maybe is everything apophenia now? But it's great, it's been really generative for me, so thank you, Allison. Okay, so this piece starts with a poem by my friend Michelle DeTore, and the poem is titled Poem. I opened the wolf's mouth and put in my head, I only wanted to know what I wanted. Okay, this is the piece. The Tower is a tarot card signifying a significant and shocking transition, the loss of a job, or a breakup, or a dire diagnosis. Traditionally, the card depicts a brick turret sheared in two by a yellow bolt of lightning. Two figures spill out of the crack in the toppling tower. One is frozen in midair, and the other is splayed out on the grass. The card is inspired by the legend of Saint Barbara, who was kept in a tower by her father, Diosaurus, who kept her from unworthy suitors. In her enforced solitude, she prayed in secret. When her pagan father discovered her praying to a Christian god, he beat and tortured her. Undeterred, while her father was away on an expedition, Barbara added a third window to the two windows built into her tower to represent the Holy Trinity. When he returned, Diosaurus, enraged by her disobedience to him and her deference to God, beheaded her. Immediately, a bolt of lightning struck him down. I left Santa Barbara, St. Barbara's namesake town, in a moment when my job, housing, and love life all fell apart at once. My foundation crumbled. Unruly neighbors, a revolving door of hired and fired colleagues at work, romantic entanglements that tied too tight or too loose, all of these. But also, I didn't want to be who I was or love what I loved. I didn't want to be someone who lived in a house by the beach. I wanted to be too smart for sunsets. No one is meant to live in paradise forever. In Santa Barbara, however, they know a secret incantation that will allow you to remain as long as you'd like, under the matching terracotta roofs on every building, even the McDonald's, that give the town the effect of a colonial amusement park. If every day you say to people, new in town, the grocer at the checkout, your coworkers, we live in paradise, you can do your dishes in Eden. I spent the summer before I left, texting photos back and forth with my friends of the riotous hot pink and lavender sunsets we shared. The word paradise originates from an old Iranian phrase, paradadya, meaning walled enclosure, like a private park. Slowly, the definition of paradise extended past the yards of the royals. Oh, I looked up and I lost my spot. Here we go. Beyond the peacocks eating the rotting apricots dropped from the orchard trees, the reflection of the clouds in the aqua pool. Eventually, through time and translation, the palace walls came down. Paradise changed from a place that no one would ever want to leave to somewhere impossible to stay. The night of what we who lived in Santa Barbara in the summer of 2014 would train ourselves to politely call the tragedy, what the media called the massacre, was a Friday. I was walking around downtown, about 20 minutes away from campus, with a friend of mine. We went into a stationery shop that also sold knickknacks, many of them sea-related, since the main strip, downtown State Street, ends at the beach. We took selfies under a metal mermaid Xing sign. The Little Mermaid saved a prince from drowning in the ocean and fell so deeply in love with him that she traded in her tail for legs. The price for her legs was her voice, which she left behind in the ocean. The prince rejected her, marrying instead a human woman whom he mistakenly believed saved her. By the end of the story, the Little Mermaid, torn between her human body and her prior mermaid form, dissolves back into the sea to become foam. In The Second Sex, Simone de Beauvoir saw the story of the Little Mermaid as an allegory for the price of female heterosexual desire. In life, Hans Christian Andersen began writing The Little Mermaid the day after the man he was in love with, Edward Collins, married a woman. He had expressed his womanly feelings in letters to Collins, who gently rebuked him. Andersen performed that enchanted drag of language by writing himself as a mermaid who pined for a prince. In his fairy tale, Andersen desperately tried to shift himself into a shape pleasing to Collins at the cost of his own authenticity. The Little Mermaid is a story about the consequences of changing your own personal narrative to hold up someone else's. We also know that the cost of walking away, of refusing to reassure the person in power that they are the protagonist, the prince, is violence. It can seem like love and death have always been a double helix. In the 9th century, Taoist alchemists presented their formula for the elixir of life to the emperor, who drank it and keeled over dead. This potion was the first gunpowder. The first fireworks were bamboo rods filled with early gunpowder, which were ignited in ceremonies to frighten away ghosts. Now we use the language of pyrotechnics to describe explosive infatuation. Any sparks? Were there fireworks? 3 days after the mass shootings in an El Paso, Texas Walmart and a bar in Dayton, Ohio, the New York Times ran a brief explainer titled "How to Tell a Gunfire from Fireworks." According to the public safety expert interviewed, the best method is to listen to the rhythm. Gunshots are evenly paced, with spaces between each bang. Fireworks are more erratic in tempo. The expert admits, however, that after listening to thousands of recordings, he can't always tell the difference. On internet message boards, young men who sympathize with him refer to Elliot Rodger as Saint Elliot, the patron saint of involuntary celibates, or incels, men who blame women for not having sex with them. They call May 23rd, the day of the shooting, his Saint's Day, a day to be celebrated in his honor. They photoshopped images of Rodger as a Catholic saint dressed in robes and crowned with a halo. Nicholas Cruz, who killed 14 students and 3 staff members at Stoneman Douglas High School on Valentine's Day 2018, previously commented on a YouTube video about Rodger, "Elliot Rodger will not be forgotten." On April 23rd, Alec Minyasan posted, "The incel rebellion has begun. All hail the supreme gentleman Elliot Rodger," to his Facebook page before ramming a van into a crowded Toronto intersection, killing 10 and injuring 16. 8 of the 10 killed were women. Like The Little Mermaid, the mythology of the incel movement was authored by someone desperate to be loved. Ilana's involuntary celibate movement was an online mailing list started in 1997 by an intensely shy Canadian woman coming to terms with her queerness. The year that it was founded, Ilana's website received an award from the gay, lesbian, and transgender disabled veterans of America for web excellence. And there's an exclamation mark at the end of web excellence. Alana introduced her intentions for the mailing list with an anecdote about a fellow math student at Carleton College who confessed to her that at 27 he had yet to go on a date. And this is from Alana's first post. This article is about people like me and the handsome stranger, and maybe you too. People with a problem nobody talks about. I will call it involuntary celibacy. It can happen whether you are outgoing like me or shy, whether you are gay like me or straight. It's not uncommon. You can probably think of a maiden aunt or an acquaintance who never mentions a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife. Our society expects us to form couples and families, though, so I feel embarrassed for never having a significant other. Our society now lets us talk about who we are, an immigrant, a person with a disability, a religious believer, etc. We can talk about our problems, being poor, having an addiction or a history of abuse, and so on. By sharing, we can learn that others are in the same situation. People can help each other, accept themselves, and solve any problems they might have. Each person who speaks up makes it easier for others to come out of the closet to themselves and to the world. So I'm speaking about being an involuntary celibate. Ilana mentions her first girlfriend at 24 and recommends self-help books, therapy, and tips for better skin. It's unrecognizable from Elliot Rodgers' manifesto, which begins, "Humanity, all of my suffering in this world has been at the hands of humanity, particularly women." Still, the two documents are irrevocably bound by longing. In her review of Norman Mailer's The Executioner's Song, a novelization of events surrounding the murderer Gary Gilmore's death, Joan Didion called it a novel of the West. In the West, Didion said, men tend to shoot, get shot, push off, move on. Women pass down stories. It would be easy enough to say that Elliot shot and got shot while Ilana had told a story. But Hans Christian Andersen told a story too. One of the fairy tales that we first heard as children and that we still tell children about belonging and exclusion and by merit who is deserving of love. I moved to New York because it's both geographically and ideologically as far as I can get from Santa Barbara. I go on dates, one of whom suggests that in honor of my move, we meet at a California theme bar with bathrooms labeled Pacific or Atlantic and the state flag pinned to a wall. After emerging from Atlantic, he asked me why I moved here. I deflect by saying that I teach writing, that I published a book a few years ago, that I can't drive. He says, we're both aspiring writers. I feel as if I told him about a dream I'd had once, or maybe I'm a dream he's having now. At the end of the night, when he puts his hands up to touch my face, they go right through me. Walking home from the bar, I hear the thick plastic sheath that covers a half-constructed apartment building on my corner roaring in the wind. It sounds like the ocean. That's it, thanks.